So Rubica is a consultancy, and we help organisations to make change happen. And I specialise in culture change and the culture of organisations. And one of the ways that we find it useful to think about culture is as a collection of organisational habits. It's a way of making culture a bit more relatable to our real world, if you like. And one of the habits that we notice is not that prevalent in organisations, and yet has the power to transform organizations and transform the customer base that they serve. It has the power to drive innovation. It has the power to enhance performance. And there is evidence that this habit does all of those things, but it's not that habitual, is asking good questions. So one of the things that I'm hoping to talk to you about today is why that is. Why is it that something that has the potential to have such great power and is seemingly so simple, and something that perhaps on the surface we think we do all the time, is actually quite lacking in organizations? And I am totally including myself in this, by the way. I am a bit rubbish at asking good questions, but it is something that is part of my continued learning and practice. So, the quote that inspired you, Nelson, is a shameless steal from this chap, who is David Cooper-Ryder. And some of you may be familiar with David's work. He's the founder, if you like, of the thinking around appreciative inquiry. And I really acknowledge that some of you on the call may be really familiar with appreciative inquiry. You may be practitioners of appreciative inquiry. But for anyone who doesn't know what appreciative inquiry is, it's simply a method for supporting organizations to change by coming at it from a slightly different angle from the one that perhaps we're all used to, or have certainly grown up with since the Industrial Revolution, really, which is by focusing on what's already working. So what's good in the organisation, what's good, best and better, rather than what the problems are or what needs to be fixed. And much of management thinking, certainly from the 80s, has been around this idea that organizations are machines, they have things that go wrong with them, and we need to constantly tinker and be seeking out all of the problems that are not working and put all of our effort and energy into those problems so that we fix them and make our performance better. But actually, David came at it from a different angle and said, well, hang on a minute, we're putting all of that energy and effort into the understanding and working out all the stuff that's not working. What if we just put all of that effort and energy into understanding and thinking about the stuff that is working and doing more of that? And very simply, appreciative inquiry works magic. We practice it a lot at Rubica. It's one of the core foundations of our culture work. And I'm evangelical about it. It really makes a difference in organizations. And the reason it makes a difference is because it is founded in the simple art of asking good questions, asking good, positive, open-ended questions that allow people to explore possibility together, collectively, and come up with ideas that otherwise they would not have come up with. The other reason that organizations are shaped by appreciative inquiry is because essentially our reality is a construct that is of our own making. It's the stories that we tell. So if we tell more positive stories, if we talk to each other more about the things that are good and working, the likelihood is we're going to create more of that in our reality. Obviously, if we spend all our time and effort talking about things that are not working, the potential is that we're going to create more of that. And it's one of the reasons that organizations often feel stuck, and we're called in to help organizations get past these moments of stuckness, because the focus is on the problems and not on the possibilities. The other way that questions shape our organizations is because leaders quite often, and actually all levels of hierarchical organizations, which most of us still work in, even if we'd like to not, leaders are sitting in a bubble. So Hal Gregerson wrote this brilliant book called Questions of the Answer. I recommend it. And he talks about leaders being in this bubble where they are shielded. They'd only get told the things that people think they ought to be told, and they don't get told the things that they really need to know. So the onus on those leaders is to ask questions. People will not share the right information, and their decisions are only as good as the data or the assumptions on which those decisions are based. So if you are a leader living in a rarefied environment, surrounded by people not telling you the right information and protecting you from information they think you shouldn't know, you're going to have to ask some really good punchy questions to be able to get at the information that you need. And lots of leaders who are very successful talk about the importance of sweating to really ask that right question. That actually, I think Elon Musk talks about it, that the effort is in constructing the question. It's not actually in finding the answer. And it still is true to say in a lot of organizations that so few questions get asked by leaders of their people. So most of my background is in communications, and you'll quite often see a lot of our internal engagement that's essentially set up to be two-way, still really predicated on the idea that the leader has the answers and the people can ask them. So you might have a town hall, you might have a yam jam, you might have a workplace session, but the tone of it is still very much, I'm here, I have the knowledge, you can ask me anything. And I am always intrigued when people flip that and you see that shift of power and leaders instead ask others for information. So why is it so hard? Why don't we ask? Well, culturally, we're not set up to ask. This is Edgar Schein, another writer who I would strongly recommend you read his stuff. He's written a book, Humble Inquiry. He's also written loads of work on organizational culture. But he talks about the fact that we, certainly in Western culture, have this do and tell culture. So the emphasis is on what we do, the tasks that we complete, but also on what we are able to tell. It's on the knowledge that we're able to share. And we're bathed in that. We're absolutely bathed in that. If you think about how we are educated, and there's some stats that, the average 6 to 18-year-old student in school asks one question per hour per month. That's compared to 291 questions per day posed by the teacher. So it's unsurprising that we have this disproportionate emphasis on being able to answer well versus being able to question well. We also have, again, not everywhere, but in a lot of organizations, a status that comes from being expert, and that status that comes from expert is often conflated with the status we get from leadership. So leaders like to be seen as expert, and again, experience and data show that it's quite often the default hat we'll put on when we get asked a question. We'll go straight into our we know the answer because of our expertise mode. It feels really good to fix. All of us like to be able to fix problems. It gives us a hit of endorphins. It feels positive. Again, any organization that's looking to empower their people, if they want a culture of empowerment, higher accountability, really pay attention to how your leaders are fixing or not. Really good intentioned, well-intentioned managers, leaders jumping into fix is a really strong signal that you're probably not going to be moving towards empowered organization. And then finally, one of the reasons we don't ask is because we actually don't want to know. Quite often asking hard, punchy, crunchy questions reveals our own ignorance, or it might give us some information that means we have to change course, and that's hard. Or it might mean that we have to challenge some of the assumptions that we've made. So sometimes we just don't want to know. But why is it so important to ask now? Well, it's important to ask now for lots of reasons. We've touched on a lot of them. Connection is one of the most important things we need to maintain at the moment, and asking beautifully constructed, humble, if you read Edgar Schein's work, open-ended questions where you truly are seeking to understand what's going on for the other person is a fabulous way to build connection, even remotely. So asking questions is an important part of relationships, and we need to focus on that right now. But also, we need innovation at the moment. We've been talking about it, we need new ways of thinking about how we do work, about how we get things done. And for a lot of us, we need to still be making progress in our businesses. And one of the things that happens in a time of great anxiety, like we're experiencing now, is that part of our brain shuts down and we go into paralysis and we are less able to innovate. But questioning, asking really great questions is a way to unlock that. It's a way to move us through our paralysis and into moving work forward and into innovating again. So we really need it. But perhaps the most important reason that we should ask now is that asking questions that shape our organizations is one of the most important things we need to do. What are we going to let go of? What are we going to let go of? How can we reimagine the work that we do so that we unpick some of the devastatingly damaging impact of the way we've done business so far and start to move forward in a different way? How do we challenge each other in a positive and constructive way to find the best, the better of what we've had and pull that through into the future? Now, we've talked a little bit about you can't change other people's behaviour. I really believe that. You can only really change your own behaviour. So I said at the beginning that I'm quite rubbish at asking good questions. So here's my commitment. I am being the change, if you like. And these are the 3 questions that I'm committing to ask one person every day for the next 60 days to form my own new habit. I would really love it if you had answers to some of these questions that you felt like sharing, that you would share those, but also that you might think about how you could ask different questions from today.